It's another high concept philosophy of design type video. And yeah, we are going to be talking about Lancer today. I was in a conversation the other day, as so many of these opinions get started with. And we talked about the relationship between the attribute system of whatever RPG we're discussing, the relationship between the attribute system and your offensive capabilities. And it is my opinion that if your, whatever it may be, your like attack bonus or your like save target number, your save DC, if you will, if your ability to interact with the world is directly tied to a specific attribute, that attribute is not optional. It is pretty much mandatory if you are looking to maximize your character's ability to influence the world, which I think most people are. It's kind of mandatory to maximize that stat, which means that your attribute system is actually maybe less customizable than it might appear. Let us take D&D for an example, because everyone's familiar with D&D. So you have your 6 attributes: strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. If you are attacking in melee, your attack stat is strength. If you are attacking at range, your attack stat is dexterity. If you are casting spells, your attack stat and save DC is either intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, respectively, for whatever class you are, whatever specific spellcasting class you are playing. So those are your primary stats. Now, this is also true for 4th edition. This is a sin that 4th edition also commits. It is a minor sin overall, because it doesn't break the game, but it does lessen the game. Because in 4th edition, every class has a primary stat, at least one primary stat, and secondary stats. And so those are the stats that whenever you are able to raise your stats, those are the stats you should raise. Which kind of takes the choice out of things, doesn't it? It kind of means that, like, when you are assigning your ability scores at character creation, you kind of have to focus on those stats. And whenever you get ability score increases, you are really pushed hard to increase those stats, whatever 2 stats you are focusing on. In 5th edition, it tends to be more like 1 stat primarily, and then like after that you go and raise another stat, because you're allowed to do it that way. It's a little bit more efficient. So, like, whatever your casting stat is, max that out. And then max out your constitution, because constitution is a god stat in 5th edition. So the issue then is that a new player comes and looks at your attribute system, let's say it's D&D's ability scores, and says, oh, I can customize my character. I can give them whatever attributes I want to help realize the vision that I have for my character. What a fantastic layer of customization this game offers me. And then as you get more used to the game, you go, well, here are the benchmarks that I need to hit in order to, be up to the expected output for my class at my level. And if I'm not doing that, if I'm not hitting those benchmarks, I'm probably not really contributing to my party, which means they're having to cover the difference. And that's a drag. That's bad. I hate that personally. Like, maybe that doesn't bother everyone. I hate that. I cannot stand it. I have to be useful. So the ability scores get a lot less interesting in that case. And what you're left with is you have your like primary stat covered, and then it's sort of, you have your primary stat and then constitution. And then after that, it's kind of like, a difference of maybe 1 between your 4 lesser stats. And that's generally how like assigning ability scores goes. Now, obviously it's a little bit different if you roll for stats, but it still kind of comes down to the same thing. Your highest one goes in your primary stat. Your second highest goes in constitution. And then everything else you just kind of distribute however you feel like, and it mostly doesn't matter, because largely speaking, it's not going to come into play very much. And the difference is not going to be that big when it does. So here's what I propose. Do like what Lancer does, where your offensive abilities, your attack modifier, and your save target, with the number that people need to roll to save against your effects, whatever it is that your particular system has, do like what Lancer does, where it is not based on your stats at all. Lancer has 4 stats. Let me see if I can remember them. It is structure. Is it structure? Yeah, I think it's hull. It's called hull. Hull, agility, systems, and engineering. Those are the 4 stats. Now, they do modify your mech's abilities, some of their stats, but not your offensive abilities. Your attack modifier and your save target are... The save target is kind of based on your frame. That's going to give you your base save target, and then it's modified by how many license levels you have, which everyone should be advancing at the same rate. And then attack modifier it starts at +0, which is kind of cool. I really like that Lancer's attack bonuses start at 0, because then when you look at someone's defense value, you know what number you need to roll on the die to hit that number. There's no more obscuring, like, your defense is like an 18, which sounds high, but I have a plus, 6 or 8 to hit, so actually it's not as high as it seems. There's none of that obfuscation. It is the defense value is the number you need to roll on the die to hit that target. Which I think is kind of cool. Now, you lose a bit of that as you level up, because you add your grit, which advances by level. You add your grit to your attack rolls, but I digress. The point being, it is not based on your stats because you get skill points to put into your 4 mech skills, which are your attributes. In the context of this, those are your attributes. You get points to put in those skills. Now, if one of those skills, like let's say systems, modified your attack bonuses, well, you have to put all your points into systems. Maybe like 1 or 2 into the others, just to sort of round things out a bit. But your offensive ability is in a game that is focused around combat, such as Lancer, such as Dungeons and Dragons, every edition. In a game that is centered around combat, your offensive stats are the most important numbers on your character sheet. And so you are obligated to maximize those within reason, because oftentimes there's a choice where you're losing out on other things if you want to get it to actual maximum. So it's, anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Point being, by removing, by disconnecting, unhitching, if you will, the attributes or ability scores or stats or skills, whatever you want, the things that you are distributing, the core stats that you determine, by unhitching those from your offensive abilities, Lancer and a few other games has created a situation where they have created more freedom. It is much more about player choice and how you wish to customize your mech. There's no more right answer. There's no more absolute, like, you definitely have to do this. Now, there are some exceptions. I would say that certain frames in Lancer, you really, really, really want certain stat distributions. What comes to mind is the Goblin, for example. The Goblin needs lots and lots of systems and maybe engineering. I think they need to maximize systems kind of a lot for reasons, but not related to this issue. It's a separate issue having to do with the way that your mechs are built. But the increase in freedom is remarkable. It's something that I noticed right away, is that I did not feel an immediate automatic draw to any one of the 4 stats in Lancer. And taking this back, this advice primarily refers to, or primarily pertains to RPGs that are combat centric. If an RPG has one primary focus, whether it's combat or something else, if there's one thing you are primarily going to be doing for the entire game, and there's a stat that says you're better at doing that one thing, that's the only stat that matters, and the others are distractions. So that is why it's important to unhook the stats that you choose as a player from the abilities that, or from the offensive, the direct active interaction numbers, if you will. Like if we want to put a very general, like not specifically combat related term to it, by disconnecting those, you increase the freedom and the customizability of characters. Or there is an alternative solution, which is to make your game not about one thing. This is an issue in Dungeons and Dragons because Dungeons and Dragons is primarily about combat. It is about killing monsters, getting treasure, saving the day, heroic, action-oriented kinds of adventures. There's going to be a lot of fighting in a typical D&D game. In other games, such as, say, Blades in the Dark. I give Blades in the Dark as an example of a game that has lots of different focuses. You can often use violence to serve your ends, but you can just as easily use social manipulation or commanding groups or infiltration, stealth, the obfuscation of your means to accomplish the end. There's lots of different ways. I'd say, like, in any given situation, there's at least 3 different ways to try to go about resolving an issue, usually more. And so Blades in the Dark doesn't have this issue, because you can sort of, like, invest points into the thing that you want to be really good at, and then you get really good at doing that one thing. But then you have to figure out ways to use that one thing in situations where maybe it's not ideal to use. Violence, it solves a lot of problems. Violence doesn't solve every problem. And sometimes it makes more problems. You get what I'm saying? Legend of the Five Rings, same thing. Like, you can be a combat monster. You can be a social deity. You can be a master of the spirits. But none of these are singular focuses of the game or the setting or any of the assumptions therein. And so, Legend of the Five Rings allows you to put points directly into being better at those things, and it's not a problem. Because it's not primarily about any one of those arenas. It is only really an issue if an RPG is primarily about one arena of play. There's one primary way to interact with the game, such as in Dungeons and Dragons, where violence is generally the answer. That's so yeah, I really like the idea of disconnecting stats from offensive abilities. My not Legends and Lore, because that one's just about ready to put out on the shelf here. But my next game is going to be the latter solution, where there's lots of different ways to approach a problem, and so you are able to put points directly into stats that affect your ability to do those things. So, yeah, I like disconnecting stats from offense. I think it's really neat advent that has occurred within modern RPG design, and I kind of wish more RPGs would do it. It's not traditional, but it is effective, and yeah, I think it's good.